Hey there, badass dream makers. This is the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. It's Alex, your badass dream maker host. I'm here because I believe that all humans deeply desire and thrive in loving relationships. And let me tell you, it's possible because many do find the love of their dreams and more. I'm just here as a guide to help you through the variety of obstacles and hurdles in dating and relationships so that you can also find the love of your dreams. And you're bound to learn about yourself as well. So, 2-in-1 deal. We will get deep here, and you may feel triggered at times. Triggers and discomfort are part of a growth process. However, please use discretion as to how much discomfort you are ready for. Now, let's jump into this juicy episode and get you what you want. Hello, this is the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast, and this is your host, Alex. To all the new listeners, welcome. To all the returning listeners, welcome back. So, as per usual, let's just jump right in. So this episode, as you saw in the title, has to do with honesty equating to freedom. And I'm going to relate that to how that equates to a better relationship as well. A truer, a deeper, and more authentic relationship. So something I've noticed both with myself and just with so many people is that we often have this belief that lying is what brings us freedom. And I have found that a lot of people will hide what they truly feel, what they truly think, because they feel like what they say or think is going to trap them in some way, is going to hurt them in some way, is going to make them feel unsafe or unsettled, uncomfortable, etc. And my point here that I really want to get to by the end of this episode is that in reality, honesty is what brings us true freedom. I believe that due to generational trauma that many of us had to lie to others while we were growing up in order to feel safe. That many of us had to lie to others while growing up to feel safe. When that happens time after time, we associate lying with safety, which is completely valid why that would happen. Anything that's repeated, you strengthen those neural connections and it becomes learned, both in your mind and in your body, because your mind and body are very, very, very connected. So it makes sense. And I want to dive into some examples here. So for me personally, and I know that my parents might be listening to this, so Mom and Dad, if you are listening to this, please don't take it to offense. This is just my experience, and I'm learning from my experience. So my experience, when I was younger, I felt that I had to be perfect. I had to live up to a certain expectation, whether it be in sports or in academics. Those were definitely the main two. If I felt like I could not finish a homework or a project in time, I would lie and say that I felt sick and stay home from school instead of going to school. And I would not reveal that I did not finish that assignment or did not finish that project, that homework. I would just fake sick, which honestly ended up making me actually become sick. I felt unsafe because when I have not lived up to my expectations, and in this case, schoolwork, I was told I was a disappointment in some way, or questioned, like, if I was smart enough to actually do something in school, which honestly was super smart, definitely really smart, got good great grades. And I feel like there was a lot of pressure there still. In addition to being told I was a disappointment or that I wasn't smart enough, I would definitely not just hear those words, but I would feel the vibe, the frequency behind them. And it was one that felt unsafe to me. It felt like a hostile vibe. And I knew that if my parents were upset about other things and then this was added to it, that the environment could become hostile. So what I was doing, and like, if me not living up to my parents' expectations about my schoolwork, that could be the trigger point of leading to a more hostile environment in the home. So I didn't reveal that I didn't do these assignments or didn't do these projects, and instead would just fake sick, aka lying. Another point here is that I often tried to lie about where I was, because if I had told my parents at times where I was, then I would get reprimanded for it. If I was out too late, or I was doing something unsafe, which in my opinion, many of the things I did were not unsafe. They were mostly safe. Now, were there some things I did were unsafe? Yes, of course. And that's what everyone does, okay? And I also understand that parents want to make sure that their children are okay. And there's also a boundary, in my opinion, where you have to trust your children, because they are human beings that are also learning. And if you try to keep them in a cage, that's going to make them more likely to lie and want to fight against the rules. And so I just want to expand on this here. I would lie to my parents because if they had found out where I actually was, they might have thought that I was in too much of an unsafe situation, even if I did not believe that to be true, which honestly, I was often, like I said, often in a lot of, fine situations. And if they found out, I would get reprimanded for it, and I would be told that what I was doing was dumb or selfish or inconsiderate or careless. Basically getting all these words thrown at me, and again, that could be the trigger point to a hostile environment. It could be the tipping point that could make my home hostile. And I'm trying to think of other examples that could work here. I would also sometimes exaggerate something or lie about something to get what I want in a way that was directly correlated to my well-being. And an example I like to bring up that just makes a strong statement here is when I was in band. I started going to band 4th grade and did it through 7th grade, but then my 8th grade was in the high school, and band in high school would play during football games, and I didn't really care for the football, but I knew that a lot of people like to hang out at the football games, and I valued hanging out with my friends much more than bands. And I already was doing dance classes, I was doing soccer, track, etc. So I'm just I need some time for my friends. And honestly, I had great friends. I have great friends. I still have my friends from high school. And of course, some of them dropped off, but most of my friends were pretty safe and pretty mature for our age. And I wanted to have that time period at the football games to hang out with my friends. And I was just band isn't worth it enough for me to stay in the band, to not hang out with my friends during these games. And I knew that this friend time was so special and essential to my well-being that I was willing to lie about something to get out of band. So my parents thought it was a very bad idea to leave band. and they thought that band would contribute a lot to my growth, which could it? Sure. And there are other options of what could contribute to my growth, and I just felt like I did know better, which I honestly did know better what would be best for me. So what I did was I told my parents that if they didn't let me quit band, that I was going to kill myself. And like that sounds so dramatic. It really like does sound dramatic. And at the time, I felt like I needed to say it or else I was going to be stuck in band. And I knew that I was not living up to my parents' expectations from not being in bands the way that they wanted me to be, which again could be a trigger point for a hostile environment. So, again, lying here, like I needed to lie to be free. In all these situations, I needed to lie to feel a sense of freedom, to be able to do what I needed to do for myself. So I know that a lot of people go through really similar situations, like whether it's like the exact same situation as me or different situations along those lines. And honestly, I could give plenty of other examples, but I'm not trying to make this episode super long. And I think you get the point here. And now, as I've grown and done a lot of work on my unconscious patterns and see where my dishonesty has shown up in so much of my life, I now see how dishonesty served me back then, and it no longer serves me. It no longer serves me. We often take this association of lying and dishonesty equaling freedom into our adulthood, where we no longer need to lie to be safe. And sometimes there are situations in our adulthood that where lying like equals safety still, like for example in some abusive situations. But aside from that though, like there's no need to lie to be safe anymore. It's scary to start being more honest with ourselves, but I promise it is so worth it. I think it's good to start with being honest with yourself. If you are not honest with yourself, how are you going to be honest with others? You're not going to know the truth about yourself. You're not going to accept the truth about yourself. So how in the world could you be honest with others without being honest with yourself first? And something that's really helpful in terms of your external environment, so obviously I'm targeting your internal sense of honesty, but in terms of your external, something that's helpful here is to find the people who are safe to be honest with. And sometimes you don't know how safe you are to be honest with them until you start being honest with them or more honest with them. But I feel like you can get some sort of a gut feeling or intuition of like how they might respond. When we surround ourselves with these safe people, we feel more ready and more willing to be honest with them because they will be more likely to accept us, accept our true selves. So let those channels of honesty be as easy as possible by surrounding yourself with those safe people. And even with those safe people, honesty can still be scary. And part of it is because honesty with ourselves can be scary. Honesty with ourselves can be scary. And then even after we are honest with ourselves, it's still scary to feel out or to think about how someone might react and whether that might lead to rejection. So if you have some rejection wounds, even if you accept yourself with like the new honesty, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be scared to be honest with others. And if you're used to people being defensive around you, it is, even if you can accept the truth about yourself with yourself, it can still be hard to communicate this true self, this honesty with other people, because you haven't experienced that others will deflect or fight back in some way, or might say something negative about it, even if they don't realize it. Even if they're usually a great friend, but they just don't realize it because they have their own thoughts around whatever you're being honest about, and they will project on you their feelings. So, for example, let's say you become honest with yourself about how you tend to go for people who are emotionally unavailable. And then let's just say that with that learned truth, you tell someone that, okay, yes, I do this, and the person who's hearing it might be someone who is not yet honest with themselves and is someone who also has a problem with attracting emotionally unavailable people, and they might come off judgmentally or aggressively or passive aggressively because they haven't accepted that about themselves. And back to the point of, yes, it can be scary. It can definitely be scary for multiple reasons. But the only way we're going to feel a true sense of connection with others is to feel a sense of connection with yourself. To truly feel love from yourself to yourself. And how can you truly love yourself from yourself? Does that make sense? Let's start here. How are you going to love yourself if you aren't honest about who you are, what you do, what you say, what you think? How can you create that connection with yourself without seeing and accepting these parts of you? And if you can't do that with yourself, it is harder to do that with other people. It is harder to make those connections with other people. Because also another part of this is that if you aren't honest with yourself, then like you're not even showing people like the true you. You're not showing people the true you. And that's scary. And I'm still working on it. And everyone, honestly, so many people in this self-development world or self-love journey world are still working on it. We're still working on it because there's so many layers of how to be honest with yourself, because we are human. We are complicated. There are so many layers to us. There are so many unconscious patterns. And sometimes we have to realize certain patterns before we recognize the next ones, because it just unfolds that way. The way I like to visualize it is that sometimes like we're a knotted ball of yarn, and there's some knots that are a little deeper, but we won't see them until we unknot the ones on the outside. But they're still there. There's still a knot in there that we're not seeing that's still affecting our life. But we're slowly untangling the knots on the outside to get to the next knot, to get to the next knot. A lot of people are still discovering that, even when they are so dedicated to this process. And yes, that can take a lot of energy and time, sure. But don't let that scare you from the process, because every ounce of honesty that I have accepted with myself, that I have allowed with myself, has been another step towards freedom. And every single one of those steps feels good. It might feel scary at first. It might feel nerve-wracking, and you might feel a sense of guilt or shame, etc., about the things that you realize about yourself, that you weren't being honest with yourself about it. And when you start to work through seeing it neutrally with practice, like you go to the gym, like you practice seeing these things neutrally. And when we start to see these parts of ourselves more neutrally, the more easily we can untangle these knots and see more and more about ourselves, because we are allowing that, we are accepting that, because we are less scared of it, we are less fearful, we are less guilty. or feel less guilty, feel less shameful, feel less fearful about seeing these parts of ourselves. And that freedom comes more and more easily with that honesty. And the more we can do that with ourselves, the more we get in that momentum of honesty equaling a sense of freedom or feeling of freedom, the more likely we do it with others, the easier it becomes with others, the others, especially those who we feel safe with. And that, being honest with others and still being accepted, is like the best feeling ever. And I'm not saying everyone is going to accept you once you're being honest with them, because like I said, there's our projections, people have certain judgments, etc. And that's their own problem. That's their own problem that they need to work on. And when we are scared and don't necessarily expect someone to react positively about what we're being honest with ourselves about to them, yet they do accept it and they do love you just the same or even more, oh my God. And sometimes it can be hard to accept that they are accepting your honesty, because we sometimes have wounds around rejection that are still in our body, which is why somatic healing is so important. And we might have some patterns of feeling unlovable, and that could be something that stops you from feeling like someone's actually accepting it, even if they're showing through words and behaviors that they accept that part of you that you just revealed to them. And as you practice self-love and as you work on healing in your body, somatic healing, which has to do with like healing the mind-body connection, we open those channels for connection, for that true connection, because we start to accept that others accept us. We open the channels for connection, and that connection and that choice of someone loving you regardless of having heard something, maybe something that you felt shameful about or that you feel fearful about yourself or didn't love about yourself, we also open channels for choice. So the more that we reveal about ourselves to our loved ones and others, the more they have, the truer of a choice they have of if they love us, of if they want to spend time with us, of what they want to do with us, with how much time they want to spend with us, to what level they want to connect with us. Because not everyone is going to want to connect with you. Not everyone is ready to be with you, because not everyone will accept every part of you. So they might need to adjust their relationship with you. And sometimes they'll want even more of you because of your honesty, because of what you revealed to them. You just never know unless you give them the information about yourself. And from there, they have a choice of what kind of relationship they'll have with you. So not only are we making a channel for connection, we are making a channel for choice. And we are making a channel for deeper, more intimate love. And those are all essential in freedom. I want to give a few examples here where my honesty with myself led to honesty with others that led to a sense of freedom. So this is something that I revealed to my boyfriend later on, not right away, because I felt like he was going to have seen it as a red flag in the beginning. But then I eventually did a breathwork class, and I revealed to myself that I wasn't allowing myself to be honest with him about something. And I had told him a false story. And even though he didn't fully need to know the truth, I personally felt like it was essential for me to tell him. So I met my boyfriend at a wedding, and at the time I was in a different relationship, so I actually wasn't looking for love or anything, and nothing happened between us. I didn't even have like those kind of feelings towards him that night. We just became best friends, like, because we just our energy matches so well. So we just like hung out and talked like all night. And it was great. And then eventually I'd broken up with my ex. But before I broke up with my ex, part of what led up to that breakup was a few days, or like, how many days was it? Like some amount of time within a week before I'd broken up with my ex, I had reached out to my boyfriend, not on purpose for like any intentional like romantic reasons, but on his Snapchat he had a picture of a like hiking place, and I love hiking. So I literally just said like, where is that? That's all I asked. And from there we just kind of kept talking about like adventures and cool hiking places, and then we started talking about like adventure mishaps. And then a couple days later I was like, how about we call and talk about this? Because like we were just talking about it so much, I'm like, might as well just like call and talk about it. And then at the end of that phone call, I was like, oh shit, there exists someone like him that would be so much better of a match and aligned with me than who I'm currently with. And there were so many other things that were a part of that, okay? But like that was one part of it. And when so then a few days later, I had broken up with my ex. But like when I had told my current boyfriend like how, my ex and I broke up, I had said that it was like a week before him and I started talking, which was a lie. And again, I did a breathwork class, and what came to mind for me was like visibility and like, where am I not being visible? And this was something that downloaded in my mind and in my body. And I was like, fuck, I want to tell him the truth. I want to tell him that I actually called him when I was still in that relationship. And like, again, I it's not like I really needed to tell him, but part of me just really wanted to. Like, I just really felt like I wanted to. And once I ended that breathwork class, I got up and I ran to him and I was like, I have something to tell you. And then I told him exactly what I just told you guys. And he's like, I'm kind of glad you didn't tell me that in the beginning, because like I'd see that as a red flag, but like, thank you for telling me that now. And just having told him was freeing. It just felt freeing. Even if nothing else changed, it felt freeing. And it also felt amazing knowing that after having told him, like, he didn't love me any differently. And I also want to add that it also led to deeper connection, because one, I was being more true and honest with him about something, so he saw even more of me. And two, I recognized that he loved me just the same regardless of the truth, and that created deeper connection. And he had the choice of whether to accept or decline that, and the choice of how much to love me even after having heard that. And he made the choice that he loved me just the same. So there's that connection, there's that choice, and that deepened love just all felt super freeing and felt good. Just felt good. So again, I can go off about examples. Like, there's so many examples I can give. So I implore you to take a look at where you might be dishonest with yourself. And you can start small. Because it's hard to see it. It's hard to see those instances, those patterns of where you're being dishonest with yourself, because your ego, your consciousness is trying to protect you from seeing those things, because you'll often feel a sense of guilt or a sense of shame or a sense of fear around them. And that's completely valid. It's completely valid that you feel that way, for sure. It's understandable. There's so much more we could dive into that would take way too long in this episode to do. And that is part of my coaching. So that is a part of my coaching. We do that kind of stuff, working on unconscious patterns. and discovering or being dishonest, and how to reach more honesty and intertwine that with connecting and choice and deeper love. And just for now, when you see those little parts of you that are being dishonest with yourself, like, how can you practice seeing it neutrally? Even when you feeling that sense of fear or shame or guilt, how can you see it more neutrally? Can you see how others sometimes do the same things, maybe in different levels? How can you see yourself having a human experience? We make mistakes. We're not perfect. No, nowhere near perfect. How can you start forgiving yourself for these instances of dishonesty? And I implore you to really think about how good it can feel when you're honest with yourself and you're honest with others. You might not feel good about it right now, but I am telling you from experience that you will get there. If you do the work here and you trust the process, I know everyone here is like, trust the process, trust the journey, whatever. Yes, I know, it's cliche, it's used many times, but like, honestly, I can't think of a better term or a better phrase. Part of this is not just doing the work, but it is trusting that the work will get you there. And this is something I do in my coaching with my clients. I think that the long-term solution here is to break the cycle of generational trauma, and not put our children and others in situations where they feel like they need to lie to be safe. That's the long-term solution here, in my opinion. And it starts with you. It starts with you. It starts with the cycle breakers. Let yourself be that cycle breaker. Be that cycle breaker. The world needs you to be the cycle breaker, so people don't have to feel unsafe when they're trying to tell the truth. Take what you learned in this episode and do something with it. Don't just keep it on your mind. Take action. Answer those questions. Write about it. Make audio messages if you don't like writing. Talk to your friends about it. Talk to safe loved ones about it. Talk to a coach about it. Talk to a therapist about it. Do something. Do something. Because that's the only way that you're going to feel this sense of freedom. So thank you for listening. And make sure to subscribe. Leave me a good review. Share it with a friend so more people can hear this message and apply this message. And share it on social media. Make sure to tag me so I can celebrate with you that you've listened to this. Share something with me that you've taken away from this, that you're going to do, that you have done. Let's stay accountable here. Because this is so important in relationships. And even just in life in general, with your own life. And that is all for today. Again, thanks for listening, and talk to you next time.